Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So on the night of Thanksgiving, rioting, looting, violence broke out on the streets of Dublin, Ireland, that is. This was after a knife attack in which a man reportedly in his 50s started stabbing kids and their adult attendants outside of a primary school, grade school in Ireland. 3 kids were stabbed, 2 adults. Several are reportedly in critical condition, last I saw. And so this gave way to the rioting, which was characterized by the police and the prime minister as instigated by some faction of right-wingers, because the assailant is allegedly somebody who came to Ireland and had lived there for a couple of decades. I don't know if he is an Irish citizen or not. But the flip side is, one of the individuals who intervened to stop the attack is an immigrant from Brazil who's a delivery driver. So was it about the nature of the attack and the attacker, or is there something more profound going on in Ireland, and this sort of was a tinderbox, and this was the match? By the way, in no way is that intended to justify, because we never do, any sort of violence at looting and the violence that you probably saw online and on news reports. I mean, you know, what does looting have to do with a public policy disagreement? Nothing. Doesn't work in Chicago for Black Lives Matter. It doesn't work in Dublin. I don't care what the topic is. So that's just sort of a statement of first principles. But anyway, that doesn't absolve this prime minister. We've mentioned him before, but now that he's bubbled up to the surface again, this is the kind of prime minister Ireland has. He'd be very comfortable with the with the identitarians in Chicago, at least, including all of the Irish politicians who preceded the Brandon Johnsons and the Lori Lightfoots and the Rahm Emanuels, who laid the seeds for Chicago's destruction, lest we forget. Now I see where they get it, apparently. This is Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar talking about how the government in Ireland is too white, just to give you a little flavor for this dude.
One thing I strongly agree with the Deputy on is the need to set a target to have a number of people from ethnic minorities in areas of the public service. We have a health service that's very diverse, although less so as you go up towards the senior positions, not so much in the Gardaí, not so much in the Defence Forces, not so much in the education sector, as the Deputy mentioned, not at all in the civil service, which is very white, including the Department of Equality, for example, and that actually needs to change. So we need to have, I think, a target for people who come from ethnic minority backgrounds, but also dedicated recruitment campaigns to encourage people, because we do need a generation of young people growing up in Ireland who are people of colour to see black and brown school principals, judges, Cian Corla perhaps in the future. Who knows? Visibility and opportunity is really important.
And there's nothing more I like than a honky talking about how this government he's a part of, or this business he's a part of, is too honky. So, you know, feel free to lead by example there, Leo. Here's what Prime Minister Leo had to say about the rioting.
To all those cowardly champions of Ireland who took to the streets of Dublin last night, let me say one thing. Ask your sisters, ask your friends, ask everyone you know what they fear most on our streets. They're afraid of you, afraid of your anger and your rage, afraid of your violence, your hate, and how you blame others for your problems. As a government, we will be relentless in protecting our citizens and defending our people. The Gardaí will be on the streets in large numbers and will do whatever it takes to fight back waves of ignorance and criminality. The Minister for Justice will coordinate with the Commissioner to ensure we never witness such terrible scenes as the 23rd of November 2023 ever again.
What about the stabbing of those kids?
Yeah, exactly. And we're learning this morning that Irish police are investigating Conor McGregor's tweets about the Dublin riots.
Right, because that's
and they're investigating the wrong thing right now.
Well, that's what's really central. I mean, again, unlike in the U.S., we've seen this in the U.K. too. You don't have the same First Amendment protections, and Conor McGregor basically tweeted out a response to the police chief, who again said this is a fringe, right wing, so on and so forth, and he just said the absolute picture of weak and feeble, the most divisive of all is the weak man. One of the most horrific crimes this nation has ever occurred, this nation ever seen has occurred. We do not care anymore what you said, what you sad cases have got to say. In a war, you are nothing. We are not backing down. We are only warming up. There will be no backing down until real change is implemented for the safety of our nation. We're not losing any more of our women and children to sick and twisted people who should not even be in Ireland in the first place. Call it what you want. We don't care. May God help us all. Ireland for victory. And then he later qualified that, say he's not condoning the rioting and the looting that occurred, but he's making more of a statement about protecting the people of Ireland, like those kids and adults that were stabbed. Okay, well, interesting times. For more on this, please be joined by John Waters, who's an Irish thinker, talker, and writer. You can get his musings at his Substack, which is entitled Unchained. John Waters, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, Dan. Good morning.
Good morning. So, give us a handle on what you believe to be the reality on the ground there in Dublin, and these seeming, the seeming politics around immigration coming to the fore in the backdrop of this attack.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say, Dan, is that you got to remember Ireland is an island of lies now. Official lies. So virtually nothing that comes out of the mouth of a politician, or indeed a journalist, to be honest, in Ireland now can be believed or taken at face value until you're
familiar with the concept. Yeah.
Yeah. So and there's a war of ideas and words and of a spiritual war, you could say, going on in Ireland. And mass migration is a part of it. Again, we have to distinguish the issue as they continually try to present the issue as being about migration. Migration always happened. What they're doing is imposing huge numbers of migrants on Ireland. Really vastly, the equivalent of about 10 million in the past year in America, in the United States. Huge number, nearly 150,000 people were brought in at the dead of night without papers, without vetting, without identification even in many cases, and imposed in hundreds upon tiny hamlets and villages all over Ireland. And the communities of those towns and villages were told, you don't have any right to object. You don't have any right to decide who comes into your community. And therefore, by implication, you don't have any right to have these people vetted on your behalf before they come in. Now, that's the background. Now, of course, the individual who is said, and we have to be somewhat vague about what we say about this, because no charges have been leveled yet against an individual, but it was a person allegedly who was in this country for quite some time. The backstory, again, allegedly, is that he had already been ordered to be deported. But the Irish policy of deportation is set. They tell you to leave the country, and then that's the end of the process. So he didn't leave the country, and then miraculously he became a citizen a couple of years later. How that works, I don't know. I can't help you there, Dan. But this is kind of, you see, at the background into this fundamentally is that for 30 years now, like 30 years ago, and I don't promote this as a virtue because it is what it is. 30 years ago, Ireland was predominantly Irish, 95%. And of those, probably 99% what is called white. But white is an ideological category which has no place in Irish history. We have no history of racial conflict. We shouldn't be fighting wars on our soil that belong in America or South Africa. This is Ireland. We don't have to have diversity quotas in Ireland because we are an island of Irish people. And people are welcome to come here, and they have come here. When they have reason to be here for work or play or whatever, have been made welcome. But what is happening now is really a replantation of Ireland. It is quite obvious because, you know, the what's happening is quite extraordinary. Hundreds of migrants coming into Ireland, all male, all young males coming in busloads into towns where they hang around the street corners, leching after women and indeed children, teenagers. So the Irish people have said, look, can we have a discussion about this? And they say, no, if you want to discuss this, this means you're a racist.
Okay, so John, tell us what happened and how the victims are doing.
Well, as far we don't know. The information is very, very sparse. They haven't released any names of the victims except the name of the woman carer. I don't know. She was some kind of minder from the school. It's not clear because normally she might be a teacher. I don't know. That's not clear. It hasn't been specified. We understand that one of the 3 children who were stabbed, a girl, is in a very serious condition in hospital. We also gather that the woman is in a serious condition in hospital. That's all we know. You mentioned you mentioned, but again, to tell you about the lie, sorry, can I just say this one? You mentioned about the Brazilian. This is the story. You see, this is what happens. A spin goes out in the beginning that distorts the meaning of everything. The person who actually intervened most vociferously in the beginning was an Irishman. The Brazilian threw his helmet at the assailant and hit him on the head. The assailant, the person now is allegedly in a coma. I don't know if it's from the helmet or not. But again, all of this is misinformation. These people have made a crime of disinformation, by which they mean anybody who says anything that causes the Irish people to lose faith in their government, true or false of it, that's disinformation. But these people issue nothing but disinformation from morning till night.
So then give me your characterization of the response with the rioting and which, you know, we saw obviously, and looting, and then the characterization by the government as, lunatic right-wing fringe.
Okay, well, as regards to the rioting and so on, I wasn't there, so I can only, I suppose, apply a model that I have observed over the last 4 years, since the lockdowns began, where people were down to the streets in the past to protest. And immediately we saw that these marches and protests were infiltrated by, roughhouse interlopers, agent provocateurs, clearly Antifa, clearly under the tutelage and supervision of the police, in order to create the impression that these were violent extremists who were trying to bring down the government, this kind of thing. Now, this has all the hallmarks of this. There is actually a video in circulation showing police riot squad breaking windows in shops on Thursday night. This kind of thing, that would not surprise me. We have seen situations here where there was clear attempted felon setting of people, anti-vaxxers, for example, 2 years ago when a Masonic hall had a fire on New Year's Eve. And they tried to insinuate that this was an anti-vaxxer. When I outed the story and produced evidence that this was complete lies, it just disappeared. You see, this is unprecedented, Dan. I am 68 years of age. I've lived in this country all my life. I have been nearly 40 years a journalist. I'm absolutely awestruck and sickened every day of my life to see what is happening under this creep, Varadkar. He is the most appalling specimen. He is in the Trudeau category of appalling specimens in modern Irish or leadership terms in the world. He is a WHO member. A WEF member, World Economic Forum. He is tutored by Klaus Schwab and these guys. These people no longer represent the people that voted them into office, or allegedly, because he never received a mandate of his own. This guy, he took over from the predecessor into Kenny, and he cobbled together a coalition in 2020 of elements that had sworn on Bibles they would never coalesce with each other. Nothing they say is believable. They are just non-stop industrial liars.
Do you see?
Now, as regards the far right thing is the greatest lie. The far right thing. You did ask me about that.
Yeah.
The far right is another great lie. There is no far right in Ireland. The only existence of the far right is in the imaginations of politicians, journalists, and the police commissioner, Drew Harris, who as you said, is a weakling, a pathetic creature who just issues threats and menaces and lies at every opportunity. This country, Ireland, is finished unless we can somehow get rid of these people. They are the most appalling. I cannot imagine how they got in. How did these people pass by under the gaze of the Irish people, who are usually pretty well attuned politically and able to read people? But they disguised themselves well, and particularly for Adker. You mentioned, by the way, he's not a honky, as you said. I'm sorry. He has Indian blood. His father was Indian.
So is Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I get you. We got to leave it there. John Waters, Irish thinker, talker, writer. His Substack, Unchanged. John Waters. John Waters, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. And just so people know, the Prime Minister of Ireland, he tweeted out, the 9-year-old girl, Emily Hand, was released. He referred to her as being lost, and now she's found. Thanks so much to John, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
It's Dr. David Kolbaba.
With cold and flu season, now is the time to ensure you're building an effective immune system. Zinc is so critical for every function of your body, especially your immune defense. And there's no better way to check your zinc levels